And now we go to a special new survey done by i24NEWS in conjunction with Direct Poll. Now, we asked English-speaking immigrants to Israel whether they support Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plan to annex parts of the West Bank. Now, 47.2% of respondents said yes, versus 31.1% who said no, and 21.7% who said they don't know. Well, this compares to 90% of French speakers who said they support annexation. Well, joining us in studio is Matan Dansker, International Director of Direct Polls. And Matan, before we comment on the results, give us an idea of the breakdown of, we call them Anglo-Israelis here in Israel, but of course more accurately described as people who either English as a first or native tongue.
Well, good evening, Kalev. First of all, it's good to see Yafo back alive again here from the studios. What we do in Direct Polls is we basically took the world of surveys that was stuck in the 1980s and brought it to the 2000s. We are able to pinpoint through digital polling, specific digital polling, to pinpoint specific people and give a real profile and a sense of what people are actually thinking. What we did is basically we did a survey within Anglos living here in Israel, and we found very interesting statistics. Only 16% of those who answered were actually from Judea and Samaria, which makes the poll even more interesting. We see the majority of people who answered are from Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, about 7% from the south. And basically what we're seeing is a profile of people who are much more diverse than some of us would actually think.
Right. Well, that's seen, I think, in the results. I mean, there is I think a notion, you could almost call it a cliche, that the so-called Anglo community in Israel tends to be quite right-wing. There's also something of a notion about the French-speaking community, and there we did see 90%. But that percentage, less than 50%, I think would surprise most people, and frankly, it surprised me.
Absolutely. Look, I don't want to put more fire on the cultural battles that there's been through the French people and American throughout history, but I will say that honestly, the most interesting result here, in my opinion, is the one that we see from the Anglos. What we're seeing here is there's less of a support for the annexation plan of Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump. Now, the real question is why? Given the fact that many of the people who answered as well are living in Judea and Samaria, why are the results such? And I think the reason it is because it's tapping into the divisiveness of American politics. What we understand now better is that the Anglos here in Israel are very sensitive to what's happening in America. Now, this deal is written Donald Trump all over it. And that means that when you take the equation of identity politics in America, and you have people here in Israel who are listening to their family members speaking in America, who are seeing how divisive this is, it doesn't matter if they're for annexation or not. In a way, once this mission and plan, the annexation plan, is from Donald Trump, what we are seeing is people opposing it, maybe even if they're not opposed to the annexation, just because they're opposed to Donald Trump. And I think that's a point to notice, is that how sensitive the American, specifically community in Israel, is to what's happening in politics in America. Another point to point out here is that it seems that American Jews here are very, very scared of what we call the bipartisan issue. They are afraid of issues that put Israel into a more bipartisan issue in America. And we saw what Joe Biden said just a few days ago to Jewish donors, how much he opposes the annexation. That means that many of them would rather the status quo because they see how much Israel has become a divisive issue in America.
Right. Sort of underscored what you say. Briefly, I want to just call up, the Israel Democracy Institute did a poll on the annexation, a general poll of Israelis, and they found something quite interesting. 52% of Jewish respondents said they support annexation. That I won't go through the other numbers, but that means the general public, more than Anglo-Israelis, are supporting it. And perhaps Donald Trump is the sort of X factor. People support annexation and otherwise may not, because in a sense they associate it with Trump.
Look, you know, the ordinary Israeli who votes for right-wing parties is not interested in American policy. That's a fact. He's not dealing with issues of immigration. He's not dealing with issues of race, so he'll look at it only through the Israeli lens. When you put the Anglos into the equation, they're sensitive to what's happening there. And given the fact that we know that this plan is in the calendar of Donald Trump, for years Israel didn't annex the territories, and suddenly needs to happen in July, that's obviously because Donald Trump needs to tap in order to break the blue wall. He needs to tap into evangelical voters who support the issue of annexation. So really chaotic, it's become pretty chaotic, and it seems that Israeli politics is running the calendar of Donald Trump.
Okay, well, tapping in, as you said, into the American political debate, Matan Dansker of Direct Poll. Fascinating result. Thank you for joining us.